More than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli military since the so-called ceasefire. Even an Al Jazeera journalist, Ahmed Wishah, was killed this past Saturday by an Israeli strike. Even an Al Jazeera journalist, Ahmed Wishah, even an Al Jazeera journalist, Ahmed Wishah, Al Jazeera journalist, Ahmed Wishah, Al Jazeera journalist, Al Jazeera journalist, Al Jazeera journalist, Ahmed Wishah.
Hello everyone, Alec and Saifo Nomad here, and what you saw in the introduction was the mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani, showing so much concern for the killed journalist, as he calls him, Ahmed Mohammed Washach, even as we have all of this footage of him in fighting gear, participating in the fighting as a member of Hamas. And Hamas themselves claimed him as a martyr, as one of their casualties. And this type of manipulation, we've seen it so often in Gaza, but it's very concerning when someone with so much influence like the mayor of New York is participating in this deception while also going after AIPAC, calling them monsters and being the people who are wielding dark money in order to relentlessly kill Palestinians. This is what Zohran Mamdani has been saying and said at this press conference. This is the full context of his speech.
The Jewish community, including Democratic Congressman Josh Gottheimer, were alarmed by the language you used at the rally last week, calling AIPAC monsters who move dark money. These are phrases that invoke old anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theories. What do you say to those who are concerned that the language you used is dangerous?
Now, I want to be very clear. We're talking about a status quo where children are being killed on a daily basis. More than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli military since the so-called ceasefire. Even an Al Jazeera journalist, Ahmed Wishah, was killed this past Saturday by an Israeli strike. And when I am speaking about AIPAC, I'm speaking about an organization that has been supportive of the status quo, that has fought any attempt to actually deliver safety to people, not just in Palestine, but frankly, through much of the region. And it is a status quo for immorality. It is one that I will not accept. And when it comes to the way in which they defend the status quo, oftentimes they defend it through direct contributions, as we are seeing right now in New York 13. Oftentimes they also support the status quo through dark money, by filtering money that would have previously been directly from AIPAC, now through other shell organizations whose identities of their contributors are only made clear after an election. And I think that it is important that when we ask ourselves how such death and destruction is happening overseas, we also name those who allow it to take place.
All right, we're going to go.
And look at the whooping and cheering over there of all these disgusting communists and jihadist enablers. And I bet you none of them are even aware of the footage that we just showed you of Ahmed Mohammed Washach as a fighter, okay? A sniper and active member of Hamas. But of course, it's easy for someone like Mamdani to get away with this because you have huge media organizations that are echoing the same thing, like the BBC. This is on X. Israeli strikes kill 6 people in Gaza, including Al Jazeera cameraman, officials say. And even though you have the community note at the bottom, they still haven't taken this misinformation down. The Al Jazeera cameraman, Ahmad Samir Mohammed Washach, was identified by the AF as a Hamas sniper operative who advanced attack plans. Social media posts showed him armed and lauded him as a mujahid. His brother was also a Hamas combatant. And this strategy has been used for years by Hamas. And I say at least 20 years. Here's a clip from Mati Friedman, who used to work for AP, who noticed the deception and manipulation of journalists, as we call it, working for Hamas as early as 2008.
As far as I know, I was the first staffer to erase information from a story because we were threatened by Hamas, which happened at the very end of 2008. We had a great reporter in Gaza, a Palestinian, who had always been really an excellent reporter. We had a detail in a story. The detail was a crucial one. It was that Hamas fighters were dressed as civilians and were being counted as civilians in the death toll. An important thing to know, That went out in an AP story. The reporter called me a few hours later. It was clear that someone had spoken to him. And he told me, I was on the desk in Jerusalem, so I was kind of writing the story from the main bureau in Jerusalem. And he said, Mati, you have to take that detail out of the story. And it was clear that someone had threatened him. I took the detail out of the story. I suggested to our editors that we note in an editor's note that we were now complying with Hamas censorship. I was overruled. And from that point in time, the AP, like all of its sister organizations, collaborates with Hamas censorship in Gaza. What does that mean? You'll see a lot of dead civilians and you won't see dead militants. You won't have a clear idea of what the Hamas military strategy is. And this is the kicker. The center of the coverage will be a casualty number that is provided to the press by something called the Gaza Health Ministry, which is Hamas. And we've been doing that since 2008. And it's a way of basically settling the story before you get into any other information. Because when you put, when you say 50 Palestinians were killed and 1 Israeli on a given day, it doesn't matter what else you say. The numbers kind of tell their own story, and it's a way of kind of settling the story with something that sounds like a concrete statistic. And the statistic is being, given to us by one of the combatant sides. But because the reporters sympathize with that side, they're happy to play along. So since 2008, certainly since 2014, when we had another serious war in Gaza, the press has not been covering in Gaza. The press has been essentially an amplifier for one of the most poisonous ideologies on earth. Hamas has figured out how to make the press amplify its messaging rather than covering Hamas. There are no Western reporters in Gaza. All of the reporters in Gaza are Palestinians, and those people fall into 3 categories. Some of them identify with Hamas. Some of them are intimidated by Hamas and won't cross Hamas, which makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't want to cross Hamas either. And the third category is people who actually belong to Hamas. That's where the information from Gaza is coming from. And if you're credulous, then of course you're going to get a story that makes Israel look pretty bad.
And Ahmed Muhammad Washash is one of those people who actually works for Hamas. And Zoran Mamdani is one of those people, like Mati Friedman said there, who amplifies the Hamas narrative and is actively helping them in the halls of New York City, promoting that kind of narrative, to the whooping and cheering of all of the dumb leftists and communists there who don't understand that if that ideology had their way, they would be shoved aside very quickly, just as the leftists were shoved aside, for example, during the revolution in Iran, or just as the leftists were shoved aside after the Arab Spring, and in all of these other cases. The Red-Green Alliance on full display with Zoran Mamdani at the helm. That was Mati Friedman. He's absolutely fantastic for understanding all of these media manipulations that happen in Gaza. You should follow him on X and so forth. And that's all I have in this video, although I could talk about this subject for ages, and you could see past videos of mine on that, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this video, then you have to check out my new book, Visiting the Enemy, an Israeli blogger's journey across the Arab and Muslim world. In this travel memoir, I share with you the best and worst encounters I had traveling in countries normally considered very hostile to Israel. Some of which you can see in my travel vlogs on this very YouTube channel, and some which you can't because things also happen when the camera isn't rolling, right? In addition, this book addresses the larger historical, political, and religious issues sitting menacingly in the background of those trips. And I fuse those together with my personal experience to give an assessment about the possibility of a better future in the region and maybe even peace. I've always dreamt of being an author, and now that dream is a reality, and I couldn't have done it without you, who followed and supported me during my travels. So I want to say thank you very much to all of you, and order your copy so we can turn this book into a bestseller.